with this question. Has the multicultural experiment in this country totally failed? Really important, this. This is the detail that surrounds the story that I just want to bring you to begin with. It's the story that begins in Dewsbury, the Yorkshire, gorgeous, I think we could say, Yorkshire Minster town in West Yorkshire, steeped in rich English ecclesiastical history, referenced in the Domesday Book, an archetype of northern life, former mill town nestling on the River Calder, and a population of about 63,000 people. That's how some people still sort of think of the place in many respects. But now the names of Hassan Munshi and Talha Asmal have entered the story of Dewsbury. Two 17-year-old local Muslim boys who, it is feared, have now travelled to Syria to fight for ISIS. They went missing just over a week ago. Now, of course, there's been significant amount of head-scratching around what has happened here, particularly from Hassan and Talha's families. They say they were just two ordinary Yorkshire lads enjoying life as teenagers should. Well, they weren't, and the family were wrong. And quite why anybody would be surprised is frankly a mystery. You see, Dewsbury is no longer that quintessentially Yorkshire town. Times have changed in Dewsbury. Let me give you some background here and keep in mind that issue of multiculturalism. This is an area where they lived called Saville Town. Now, this is where they were raised. It's an area where over 2,000 of their closest neighbours are Asian, 98.7%. There are only 14 white Britons in that same area. This is all according to the 2011 National Census. When it comes to religion, the area has just 5 Christians, 5 Christians, compared to 2,111 Muslims. Now, all of that, by the way, might be absolutely fine. Surprising to some, but it gets more interesting. The main Islamic voice in Saville Town belongs to a movement called Deobandis. Now, this is, for those who don't know, a pretty austere, ultra-conservative tradition that has nurtured a conviction that British values pose a deadly threat to Islam. In Britain, leading Deobandi preachers and scholars warn that to protect the faith, believers must distance themselves from the corrupting influence of their non-Muslim British neighbours. One leading advocate says that its purpose was to rescue the global Muslim community from the culture and civilization of Jews, Christians and other enemies of Islam. This aim could be achieved, he suggested, by creating the kind of hatred and view of non-Muslims that most humans have for excrement. This is the environment that these two boys grew up in. Still scratching your head? Well, for the family of one of those boys, this story has an unfortunate resonance. In 2006, Hassan Minshi's elder brother, Hamad, aged 16, was arrested and became Britain's youngest convicted terrorist. He went to jail. I think the head-scratching might have just stopped. 0345 6060 973. Is that, in itself, enough evidence for you that multiculturalism has failed? Why would anybody be surprised that these lads want to take up arms against their own country when they were raised against such a chaotic and bilious backdrop? Is Dewsbury just one example of how some groups are not really looking for harmonious multicultural existence, but in fact seeking to subjugate the status quo and lead their own autonomous existence? 0345 6060 973. The reason I looked up and researched this story was partly on the basis of what the family had said. And it's a constant we hear. The family are very confused. They have no idea how this happened. Well, apart from the fact you took your kid on a very extremist march not that long ago to protest against all things Western, aside from that, you've got no idea how your child became radicalised. Aside from the fact that these two boys grew up in clearly the backdrop of a very austere, ultra-conservative ideology that pretty much dictates that Westerners ain't much cop at anything and you should steer clear of British values. That isn't multiculturalism. And I wonder, and I do ask the question, not in a loaded fashion, I simply wonder how kind of common that is. And when I say multicultural, I'm not here talking about colour. Most cities in this country really have kind of geared up and made the whole multicultural thing work. Most of us alive now have never really known most cities without it being multicultural. But in this respect, when you're talking about the religious values, and remember this whole area, and I'm sure I will have Muslim callers who will put me right on this, but the movement called Deobandis is, if you like, a parochial element within Islam, with, I believe, Indian origins, and if somebody can put me right on that, fine, but I think that's a reasonable portrayal. That is, however, the main voice within the town that these guys grew up in. And, of course, their brother had already served time in jail, and a convicted Britain's youngest convicted terrorist. And his family are scratching their heads thinking, how on earth did this happen? We have no idea how they could have become radicalised. Well, frankly, you're living in a radicalised society. You're surrounded by an entire agenda of radicalism. 0345 6060 973. Does that begin the process of putting our finger on the button as to what has happened here when we come to the stories that we constantly read about, that two young kids, some teenagers, a group of people, some friends, have gone together, they've caught a plane, they've gone off to Turkey, they've crossed the border to Syria, and before we know it, they're cutting the heads off Westerners in the name of their own idea of faith, etc. 0345 6060 973. Is that something that should surprise anyone if people are growing up in these kind of areas? And when I read the story of one of the parents of one of the girls that has gone missing, and we discovered actually there is a little bit of a spin on this story now, and I read this story and I'm thinking to myself, hang on, how common is all of this? 0345 6060 973. Why has, if you want to call it a multicultural project, let's call it that, why has it failed for you? What is wrong with the concept of multiculturalism? If you have a group of people, and when we're talking in this case about those that are following a sort of Deobandist strain of Islam, then there is not a scintilla of hope that there will be any kind of integration, because it goes totally against the whole idea. 0345 6060 973. Conversely, you might, by the way, think, actually, this is just a very, 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 very bad, very minor example. It doesn't happen very often. We're often told that, aren't we? And we run with it, really, I think, as optimists. I think within us, enshrined within our DNA, is ultimately an optimistic people. And we think, yeah, OK, we've got it wrong. You know, it's just a few pockets. People got it wrong in Rotherham. We talked about that the other day as well. And here we have a situation where it's becoming not so mysterious that youngsters, teenagers and the like, are disappearing from these shores to go and fight a battle in the name of extremism and terrorism. It isn't so confusing. I have no struggle in answering that question. Quite why these boys' families are scratching their heads, I have absolutely no idea. They grew up, what looks to me, in a very secular neck of the woods, an area where the main voice of Islam was telling people, well, frankly, we don't care much for British values. That's the whole point of what we stand for here. You can tweet at LBC. Let's start with Ravi over here in Hounslow. Ravi, how are you doing?
How are you, Ian?
Hi, what are your thoughts?
Well, my point is this. I really don't care where these two boys gone, just like I didn't care where these three girls went. And who else goes, let them go, let them not come back. But what concerns me is this, that how does the indigenous population differentiate between such people and myself? I'm an Indian. This is what concerns me.
Mm-hmm.
How moving forward.
So you feel you're getting it in the neck because somebody's looking at you thinking, hang on, he's a different colour from me, therefore he's probably a Muslim.
Well, I probably need a stick on my head that goes, I'm a Hindu. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, no, indeed, but are you saying that other people misinterpret that?
Well, I actually think most of my colleagues' friends, they know who these people are. And I, just like you, I think I can't think of the parents not knowing anything what's going on in their family. I have a 15-year-old son.
Sure.
If he, God forbid, joined any lunatic thing, I am responsible, simple as that. And I really couldn't care who went, but what I don't want is my taxpayer money being spent to get them back. But more, what I'm really trying to comprehend is how can I explain to the indigenous population that I'm different. That's what concerns me moving forward.
But I can understand that, and from the point of view of anyone who, and I'll use the phrase advisedly Asian, or the word Asian, but for anybody who ticks that particular box, I would imagine it's I can see how it can be uncomfortable and challenging, because there is, of course, the kind of person that will use the P word at somebody who's not even from Pakistan because they happen to be of a certain colour, and they've decided, well, that clearly they must be, in inverted commas, one of those. And I imagine that would happen with many non-whites when it comes to Islam as well. Listen, Ravi, thank you for starting us off on this 03456060973. I'm reminded of it's kind of interesting, isn't it? A lot of elements are coming together on these kind of stories. There was a programme on Channel 4 the other day. Trevor Phillips presented this, Things We Won't Say About Race That Are True. And I mentioned Rotherham a second ago, and this smacks to me as something that's in a similar territory. And we have all manner of people, the good and the great, scholars and community leaders and politicians. Look, I don't know what happened. How could this possibly be? Where did these perfectly normal teenagers become radicalised? Yeah, at home. That's where your answer is. At home. Your hometown. That's what seems to have happened here. And so whilst the family of at least one of these boys may be scratching their heads, the fact that another one of their sons is Britain's youngest convicted terrorist, I would imagine that was a bit of a clue. 03456060973. We'll chat to Ben and Andre, Mark and others in a couple of moments' time. Has the multicultural experiment failed? If you just heard what I said at the beginning in the backdrop of how these particular boys grew up, I'll let you draw your own conclusions on it, but digest that information and your thoughts here on LBC. Yes, indeed, right after the morning news with Lisa Aziz here on LBC. Back on the phones with you. Has the multiculturalism project failed? This is a kind of subject that's sort of, I think, it would be reasonable to say has vaguely been put on the back burner a little bit in some respect. We've talked around that issue quite a lot, but there's almost a settled view. Actually, no, multiculturalism is fine. We've just got to iron out a few knots here and there. When I look at this story, I'm tempted to say, based on this, it has clearly spectacularly failed. In this respect, it has absolutely failed. Some would say multiculturalism, by definition, can never really happen. You will always have, much like a coalition, you will always have to dilute something in order for it to work, and by doing so, you therefore distance yourself from the partner in question. Or partners in question, i.e. other cultures. 03456060973. I'll chat to Kay in a second. Ben is in London Bridge. Hello, Ben.
Yeah, hi. Good evening.
Good evening to you. What are your thoughts?
I think the way I look at it, there's one thing that, by looking at this and saying multiculturalism has failed, probably wouldn't be right, because there's so many other cultures apart from Muslim. But coming back to this particular issue, I'm a Muslim myself. I have no reason to believe that these kind of people are not only, spoiling the whole system in Britain, but also defaming Islam. And they have no loyalties to anyone but to themselves. For a better future and maybe a privileged lifestyle, they come and live in UK, but on the same time they undermine the system and they damage it. I think any Muslim who lives and practices Islam in UK should be thankful to the government to allow them to practice within their rights. However, there shouldn't be any extra demands of how they lead their life and how they practice their religion. Already there's enough, liberation and opportunities to practice the religion peacefully, but people like these or anyone who try and make groups or sects and work against the system or against the government or the law of the land, that is totally wrong and should be condemned. They should be given a choice. If they want to live in Britain, they should live by the land of the law. If they want to go elsewhere and practice, whatever religion or ideology, they should be most welcome to ask to leave and go where they can do that. Some
might counter that and say, well, actually, if you have a certain faith, you don't dilute it or compromise it just because of where you are. I did an interview with a man that would be, I won't dignify him by naming him on air, but a man who is known as a fairly extreme speaker in this area. And he said, if you put me in a jungle, I wouldn't behave like an animal. And his metaphor or analogy was that simply just because I'm living in a Western country doesn't mean that I'm somehow going to change what I believe Islam should be.
But can I say? I mean, it's fine. But we've not put them in the jungle. They have decided. They're voluntarily chosen, or their forefathers did. And if they do not agree to when initially their parents came to this country for a better lifestyle and more money, but now they have the choice that they can go and live elsewhere. You know, if the land of the law is superior, and that is not just by anything, that is by Islam itself. I'm a Muslim myself. If I live in this country, I should stick to my religious beliefs and ideology, but it doesn't mean that I do not obey the law of the land. If the law of the land expects me to do certain things, then I would do that, and it would not compromise my faith or my ideology. I mean, we've not asked them to come and live here. If they think that the system is not compatible with their beliefs, then they should be allowed to go and live where they can.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. No, just one thing, sir.
Very quickly.
That is what I'm saying, that these people are hypocrites. They're neither loyal to the religion, they're neither loyal to the land, they're neither loyal to themselves. If they're loyal to the religion, they in the first place would find a place where they can freely practice their religion, whichever religion that is. And if they're loyal to Britain, then they would never do something that would undermine the impression of Britain.
Okay.
And this is how I think of it.
Ben, thank you very much indeed. Passionate call, sir. Thank you. I wonder, though, whether, in terms of somebody's faith, whether loyalty would, or national loyalty would ever realistically trump religious loyalty. Anonymous on text says, I'm a Muslim convert, or revert, as I'm often corrected. And I can tell you, this negative view of the UK and its people is very, very common among Muslims. In fact, so much so, I am being turned off the religion by attitudes of Muslim-born people around me. 0345 60 60 973. Your thoughts on that? I'm interested in the fact that people were scratching their heads, wondering how this has happened. If you went to Tower Hamlets, for example, and somebody said to me, and we know that the teenage girls that disappeared, came from Tower Hamlets, a place called Bethnal Green. There was anybody that knows that neck of the woods would not be for 1 second surprised that a young person could be radicalised in that area. Now, clearly, and I will say this just for fans out there who have a PhD in not fully listening to what Man on Radio says, that clearly most of the people who live in that neck of the woods, Dewsbury or anywhere else, are not signed up to some terrorist anti-British agenda at all and probably just get on with their own lives. But equally, it would be wrong, misplaced and frankly dangerous and stupid to not acknowledge that there are pockets within those places. And everybody's scared to say it. I heard, people from the community, local politicians saying, well, we are a quiet community. No, you're not. Some parts of your community are quiet. Other parts are a hotbed of extremism. And whether that's happening in universities, whether it's happening in back rooms in mosques, whether it's happening in the playground, frankly, all of that can be established later. The fact is, we fully know that these things are occurring in certain parts of this country. And just like the Trevor Phillips programme, just like Rotherham, people are scared witless to come through and say it. Kay is in Hemel Hempstead. Hello, Kay.
Hello,
Hi.
How are you?
Very well. What are your thoughts on this?
Right, it's just beyond belief that these parents who are scratching their heads, they're bewildered with this behaviour of their children. They can scratch their heads till the hair comes off. They know exactly what's going on. I have 5 children. I'm a Muslim. My children were born here. I came to this country when I was 6 months old, and I think it's the biggest blessing in my life to have come to this country and benefit my rights as a human being. Now, these these girls that go to ISIS and whatever happens, they have no idea. They have no idea of the concept, this culture, this religion, this so-called, it's not a religion, it's a culture. I would never call this a religion. This culture that they kind of views their pose on women, that's a different issue. But these parents who are now really surprised about the behavior, one thing I want to say to these parents, why are you such cowards? You implement these beliefs, or you allow your children to to have these views. And then you are cowards. Why can't you just stand up and say, you know what, this is right. My child believes in this because this is the way I believe. They're just cowards. These people have no morals. They have no standards. They're not even true to themselves. They're not even true to each other. I have lived up north for 9 years, and the things that I came across, I was just embarrassed even to be implemented as one of them. I live in London. I've lived in London all my time, but the 9 years I lived in Rochdale and these areas, I just could not believe the kind of views these people have. I'll give you you're
talking about anti-British views?
Anti-British view, and they're making excuse. They're making a religion an excuse for what for their own biasness. They have no views of each other. Even each other, they have no respect for each other. If you're from a different caste, so these people to come up now and use Islam as a base to attack the British views, the British way of life, is just an excuse.
OK, we stop there, Kay, just for time, but thank you. Again, a lot of passion on this one this evening, 0345 6060 973. Ali is in Tottenham. Hello, Ali.
Hello.
Are you there, Ali?
Well, just listening, to this, subject, of the multicultural Britain.
Yeah.
I'm myself, I'm the Albanian origin. I came here when I was 10 years old. Now I'm early 40s. And I'm, Albania is like 80% Muslims.
Sure. But
the thing that I find really strange in this country is, because now I'm a parent myself, and I've got a son that goes to nursery and everything, is because I'm married to a Christian woman, and my son was baptized, and I want my son to brought up, because I decided, that to live in Britain with the conditions that this country and, whatever, he offers me. Now, even in Albania, which is 80% Muslim, there's no way, a kid can be brainwashed the way that, how easy it is in Britain. And I don't really understand that. For example, my son goes to nursery, he's just 4 years old, and the teacher, which is Muslim there, they keep talking about religion. And I find it really strange, my son coming home and talking to me,
So they're teaching religion in, is it meant to be a nursery with a religious strand to it?
No, it's not a religion. It's not a religious nursery.
Okay.
It's a mixed race nursery, and they keep teaching him religion, and I find it absolutely, not right.
OK. Ali, thank you. We'll talk to Rory in just a second. 0345 6060 973. Make your points known on Twitter, at LBC. You can follow me on Twitter, at Ian Collins UK. You can text 84850 or, of course, email ianc@lbc.co.uk. More of your calls still to come. We'll chat to Rory in Swanley in a second. Roger's coming on. Andre's there as well. Ken and others. Stay where you are, guys. We'll get as many of you on as we possibly can. LBC News Time now. It's exactly 9:30. Make that 10:30, and with the latest news headlines, Lindsay Kinghorn. With you in a second, Rory, don't go away. I don't want to make a huge generalisation here by saying, has all of multiculturalism failed? But are there aspects of it that we have to seriously look at and say, clearly, that bit has failed? If you look at what happened in Dewsbury with Hassan Munshi and Talha Asmal, who, the last we hear, these guys disappeared over a week ago, suspected of travelling to Syria. They grew up essentially in a hotbed, I would contest, of extremism in their neck of the woods. The brand of Islam that was practised, the fact that within their own family, their own brother became the youngest convicted terrorist this country has ever seen. And his folks are scratching their head, and community leaders are pitching up on TV and radio saying, we don't know what happened. We're such a peaceful people. Well, maybe that is so, and let's just be clear about this, that when I mentioned the Deobandis movement, I mean, there is no violence associated with it, and I'll underline that if you like. There's no violence associated with it, but there is certainly a voice that suggests that Muslims and faith believers should distance themselves from the corrupting influence of non-Muslims. And I'll say this again, one leading advocate says that the purpose was to rescue the global Muslim community from the culture and civilization of Jews, Christians and other enemies of Islam. He said the aim could be achieved by creating the kind of hatred and views of non-Muslims that most humans have for excrement. I don't think that's good multiculturalism, frankly. I don't think you've got to be a sociologist, anthropologist to work out that that's not really ticking that box, is it? 0345 6060973. I'll talk to Rory in a second. I'm just going to talk to David first in Maida Vale. Good evening, David.
Good evening. How are you doing?
Very well. What are your thoughts on this?
I just have 3 points, if you may. I'll keep them very simple. The first is multiculturalism. I'm sick and tired of hearing it because us in the Western world, there is goodness despite, what people talk about, the war in Iraq and all these kind of things. And I think, you look outside and, in and about, in my case in London, and you see good examples of Muslims and whoever else embracing the goodness from Western society. So my question is, why are we so obsessed in pursuing these people on multiculturalism, integrate, speak the language? I mean, I couldn't give a monkey's. Yes, I get irritated when I go to my local corner shop and, I look around, I'm like, what the hell's going on here? I see butchers in one corner and, fruits in another, and I can't really get what I want because it's of a different cultural makeup. But again, it's not the end of the world. What we need to do is set good examples, and you see the good Muslims and other faiths and cultures gravitate towards the way we live. That's why they're here. But on the other hand, we got to look at examples of what we've actually, again, done in the world. We've gone abroad and forced multiculturalism on people in their own country. So, we got to take it easy and just lead by good examples rather than being always pointing the finger at these cultures. The next point...
Where have we forced multiculturalism onto people?
Imperialism.
Oh, I see. You're talking...
It's forced.
All right, okay. So you're taking us back a bit. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but the last thing I want to say is to those so-called radical Muslims who don't know their scriptures and all the rest of it, who are running towards ISIS at 100 miles an hour, they need to understand that it's a trap. And if ISIS was so good and great for the world of Muslims, they wouldn't be going around in Iraq and old Babylon and Mesopotamia ruining the historical artifacts.
Well, one wouldn't have thought so, but their belief suggests otherwise.
Not at all, because what they're destroying in the Middle East is world history, the history of human origin.
Well, I would agree with that, but of course they're failing to recognise the story as it was told, so...
Well, look at Sitchin's book and you'll see part of the story.
All right, that's my next one on the list. Thank you, David. Appreciate your call. 0345 60973. Multiculturalism in this country. Maybe you think it is working fabulously, and we have to be careful that it's, this is a slice of it. I don't think when we talk about multiculturalism, we're really talking about a colour thing, by the way. Certainly in my lifetime, I've never known, let's take an obvious area like London, I've never known London to be anything but multi-layered in terms of ethnicity. But that's not the same thing, because I think most of those ethnicities are singing from the same cultural hymn sheet, if you like. That doesn't really change. There might be some traditional strands that come from elsewhere, but a black person in Hackney and a white person in Hackney, born and bred, are pretty much singing from that same kind of central set of, I wouldn't necessarily say British, but just human values. But it may well be British, it might be London, it might just be Hackney, etc. You take my point. This is really about a belief system that actively encourages groups of people to not subscribe to all of that I have just mentioned there. And in this case, the lads in Dewsbury, and certainly the girls in Bethnal Green, where the good and the great were running around discombobulating on TV channels, scratching their heads thinking, what on earth could have happened here? Well, do you not know where you live? Have you got no idea of some of the nefarious goings-on in your neck of the woods? Have you never opened up a newspaper, read a book, looked at a documentary, spoken to Andrew Gilligan, seen what's going on the council? Goodness me. You haven't got to be Columbo to work out that all is not right in Tower Hamlets. Now, clearly that doesn't mean, again, I have to say this, it does, and believe me, I have to say this, it doesn't mean that everybody has been tainted by the same dodgy brush. Of course it doesn't. Nobody would suggest otherwise. But it does mean that there are pockets and areas that, because of our need and desire and propensity to want to sing from the rafters how fabulous everything is, and we better not say that there are troubles, because if we do, we might make it all tumble down like a house of cards. So what we'll do, we'll ignore it. And I will say it again, Rotherham is exactly what happened, was because of all of this. And here it is happening again. And it might be happening for a different reason, and it might be happening on a different level. But boy, is it happening. 0345 6060 973. And in these areas and in these pockets, when leaders and politicians want to stand up and say, we're a great multicultural area, some of these places simply are not. And if you look at Saviltown in Dewsbury, it ain't. And there's no evidence to suggest otherwise. 0345 6060 973. And I would argue, and I hope reasonably and sensitively, that by ignoring this is the cruelest and stupidest thing to do. Let's go to Rory in Swanley. Hello, Rory.
Hello, Ian. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for taking my call. Yes, I actually didn't know about this situation until I happened to switch on the radio and hear you say about this, and I think it's absolutely horrifying. And I've always been a wishy-washy liberal, if I may say so. I've always thought, the multicultural society, let everyone do their own thing, etc., etc. But now I realise that what we've got are loads of hotbeds of extremism growing up, and it is very scary. It's really happening, and I think the reason for it is because we've got no alternative to offer people in this country. We're almost embarrassed to stand for anything in this country because, and I know that sounds terribly right-wing and old-fashioned, but that's my gut instinct. Because we want to accept everybody and say yes to everybody and open our doors to everybody in that sense. I'm not talking about immigration here. I'm talking about a wider issue of, let people believe in what they want to believe in and etc. Do what they want to do. People now, throughout history, people have wanted, particularly young people, passionate young people, have wanted to believe in something. Now, we live at the moment in a very, very agnostic society, if I may put it that way, in Western culture. It is very fashionable to say, I don't believe in God, or I have no faith of any kind, or I'm not religious is the big thing that a lot of my contemporaries say all the time. We have officially we have the Church of England, but to be honest with you, that's so weak that, there's no established state religion anymore in this country. And so when people come to this country, they have no faith. There's no national faith in this country that acts as I think, a viable alternative to an extreme religion or an extreme belief system, which is what you described, which seems to preach violence and hatred. My view is that a possible solution...
You're talking about ISIS here?
I'm talking about ISIS. Exactly.
Yes, okay.
I'm not talking about...
No, I just wanted to establish that.
And I am a big fan of people believing in whatever God they want to believe in.
Okay.
And finding their own relationship with a God, whatever that is, provided that they can fit in with the society around them and love their neighbours. That, to me, is a society that works. And there's a difference between multiculturalism and cosmopolitanism. I can't even say the word. Cosmopolitanism, which is where you have loads of different cultures all existing together and basically working together, doing business, working to the common good and living peacefully with each other, which is the ideal society that we should have. And it's great for trade, it's great for business, it's great for human beings. But unfortunately, we live in a rather wishy-washy, decadent society where there's no specific belief system, rather like the situation you had in the 1930s in Germany with the Weimar Republic. I know this sounds like an extreme analogy, but this gave rise to the rise of Nazism. The Third Reich took over, largely because there was no viable alternative, and Hitler seemed to present a strong alternative. Now, my fear, I'm getting onto this, my fear is that with this ISIS business, could give a big fuel to the right-wing fascists. I know this sounds a bit extreme, and forgive me, but this is my fear.
No, I think there are political movements that have certainly thrived as a result of what's happening.
Exactly, and that's my fear, that we could get...
Not just in this country.
Not just in this country, exactly. We could get a return to very right-wing extremist parties saying, well, look, we were right all along. What you need is a strong, intolerant government that puts its foot down and rules with an iron hand.
OK, Rory, we stop there for no other reason than time, but thank you. 0345 60 973. It's just a little bit interesting to me that when we were reading the story of what they're now calling the one of the jihadi brides, and Lord knows what kind of awful, horrendous existence these girls have gone to, if they are even still alive. And that had the head-scratching moment, didn't it? We had all manner of people talking about how mysterious this was. And then suddenly we discover the father of one of these girls was captured on camera at an extremist rally. Well, frankly, there's the beginning of your answer. Then we look at the other case of the two lads in Dewsbury, and we discover that they come from a pretty extreme area, and their own brother became Britain's youngest ever convicted terrorist. And his family are saying, we don't know how this happened. Well, I've got a good idea how it might have happened. 0345 6060 973. By the way, sort of connected, coming up a little later.
Why should I respect a capricious, mean-minded, stupid God who creates a world which is so full of injustice and pain?
The landscape of religion in the next 35 years. You might be surprised to know what will, and indeed what won't, be practised in the same kind of numbers by the year 2050. And why would it... It is LBC leading Britain's conversation with Ian Collins on a Wednesday evening. Lots to get through this evening. And we continue on cultural segregation or integration. Or is it really just a matter of faith or some aspects of Muna is in Greenwich. Hello.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening to you. What are your thoughts?
Firstly, I'd just like to say that some of the other callers have implied that multiculturalism has failed completely, and implying that the 2+ million Muslims that are currently living in the UK don't know how to integrate quite well, which is, I think, fundamentally wrong to even try and imply that. And secondly, regarding the two boys, the Deobandi is actually a movement which started off, I don't know if a lot of people know or not, but it started off in the British colonisation era. Mm-hmm. So their rhetoric was that it was a complete reaction to the British colonising India at that time. So the fact that they are against imperialism and against the whole British value system is how they started off fundamentally. So that knowing that background history kind of gives not excusing their ideology, but gives substance to how they still think at this precise moment.
Yes, but isn't that the issue, that they have come to a country and supposedly to integrate in that country, and they do still think that, and the fact that one speaker for the Deobandi movement said that we should look at non-Muslims in the way that we look at excrement is... I'm not suggesting that replicates everybody's views, and I was at pains to point that out, but you kind of get the idea that these aren't people who want to live the multicultural dream.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are pockets of extremism, but there is pockets of extremism in every culture and religion. I'm sure you would agree. The idea that there are these pockets of extremism is making out to be a complete failure for the whole of multiculturalism, or Muslims and the total whole 2+ million Muslims who I believe live quite well in the country, integrate quite well, and adhere to most of the British values, is also quite wrong. There are pockets of extremism which I believe we need to tackle, but there are pockets of extremism in every culture and religion. And the fact that this has been only pinpointed, that certain minorities are going abroad and joining ISIS and the likes of ISIS, while people are actually forgetting that the reason people are going over is fundamentally due to our foreign policy.
Okay. Well, yeah, I have 15-year-olds sat down and genuinely gone through the entire philosophical flaws in British foreign policy.
Not really. I mean, I'm not that old either. I'm in my 20s, and I still do believe that the foreign policy is partly to blame. You know, there's a lot of rhetoric in the media, generally speaking, regarding Islamophobia and, you know, the whole rhetoric of being drummed up that, you know, Muslims don't know how to integrate properly, or, you know, they're...
But I don't know anybody who thinks that.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that people say that people think that, but I personally don't know anybody that thinks that Muslims don't know how to integrate.
Really? Well, I've heard this several times, actually, myself.
No, I know it gets said, and I've heard it, but I've just never... I don't know anybody who genuinely thinks it.
So you're saying that people are generally saying that Muslims don't know how to integrate. You yourself have said that multiculturalism has probably failed in certain pockets because there's extremists going over. So that's implying that we don't know how to integrate.
No, that's because you just said certain pockets. That's exactly what I said. I said that specifically so that people don't think of the entirety of Muslims in this country, because that would just be a stupid thing to say.
Yeah, I do agree, but I'm saying that the main focus has been the certain pockets and not focusing on the...
Yeah, but there isn't... My point, though, Muna, is that there isn't really much of a focus on certain pockets, because what we're getting in, what happened in Tower Hamlets, what happened in Dewsbury, on both of those occasions, we had the good and the great, both community leaders and politicians, all standing up saying, we're scratching our heads, we have no idea how this happened. You haven't got to know much about Dewsbury or Tower Hamlets to come up with probably 3 reasonably intelligent reasons as to how this could have happened.
What are you implying, sorry?
I'm suggesting it's no big mystery as to how some people can be radicalised in those areas.
Yeah, there is no big mystery, but to imply the whole of Tower Hamlets, which I believe...
Well, it doesn't imply that. It implies the very opposite to that.
But you're suggesting...
No, you're suggesting. I'm not... You're suggesting that that's what I think. So no, you're spreading the Chinese whisper.
Your callers have sat there and called and are trying to imply that Muslims don't know how to integrate...
I don't think any caller has said that this evening.
Really? The last caller just sat there and tried to say that our wishy-washy views are the same as the whole Nazi view. It gave way to the Nazi view, and he was trying to compare that wishy-washy view of British values that some Muslims may have to trying to breed something like the Nazi movement.
No, he was suggesting that people who have extreme views about Muslims might well find themselves beginning to join up to extremist parties. He was talking about non-Muslims. On that point, Muna, we move on. Thank you. 0345 6060 973. Lots to get through in the next section. I just want to dip our toe into the world of narcotics